Thank you for joining us at StopMyOCD.com. My name is Andrew Colsky, and I am a licensed professional counselor specifically treating OCD and anxiety disorders. Today we have an interesting video because this is a topic that is very important when we get into the details of OCD, because a lot of people may not be aware of some of the different intricacies. So today we're going to compare and contrast various facets of OCD. So OCD is an obsessive-compulsive disorder, which is a complex mental health condition characterized by the presence of obsessions and compulsions that significantly impact a person's life. However, OCD can manifest in various forms and levels of insight. So today we're going to compare and contrast different aspects of OCD, including OCD with different levels of insight, Pure-O OCD, and Tourettic OCD, by providing definitions and examples of each. First, let's talk about obsessive-compulsive disorder. OCD is a mental health condition characterized by the presence of obsessions and compulsions. Obsessions are ego-dystonic, meaning that they are contrary to a person's core beliefs and values. They consist of intrusive, distressing thoughts, images, or urges, while compulsions are repetitive behaviors or mental acts performed to alleviate the distress caused by the obsessions. Examples of OCD might be a fear of contamination as your obsession. The compulsion could be excessive hand washing to reduce the anxiety about that contamination. So that's your typical standard OCD. Obsessions, compulsions, and now let's talk about the insight. So first, we'll talk about OCD with good insight. OCD with good insight is when individuals are fully aware that their obsessions and compulsions are unrealistic and excessive, even though they experience significant distress. Examples of OCD with good insight would include something like recognizing that the fear of contamination leading to excessive hand washing is irrational. The distress would be that they're feeling compelled to wash their hands excessively to alleviate anxiety. Now let's talk about OCD with fair insight. So OCD with fair insight is when individuals have partial awareness that their obsessions and compulsions may be excessive or irrational, but they still believe there's some validity to their concerns. Examples of OCD with fair insight might be acknowledging that the fear of contamination is excessive, but still believing that it's better to be safe. Their compulsion would be engaging in hand-washing rituals, although the individual is somewhat aware of the irrationality. Next would be OCD with poor insight. OCD with poor insight is characterized by individuals having minimal awareness that their obsessions and compulsions are excessive or irrational. They may genuinely believe their concerns are valid. Examples of OCD with poor insight could be believing that the fear of contamination is entirely rational and necessary. The compulsion, continuously washing hands without recognizing the irrationality of the behavior. And finally, we move to OCD with lack of insight. OCD with a lack of insight, also known as delusional OCD, occurs when individuals are completely convinced that their obsessions and compulsions are entirely reasonable, and they may experience delusions related to their concerns. Examples: OCD with lack of insight might have a delusional belief where you're firmly believing that your hand-washing rituals are preventing a global pandemic. Your compulsion would be engaging in extreme and persistent hand-washing without any doubt about its necessity. So recently, I've had a decent number of patients who actually were family members of individuals who had OCD with no insight. And this was a real challenge because the family members didn't know how to engage with their loved one. And because the loved one had no insight that they had OCD, they were acting in extreme ways based upon extreme doubt and then pretty strong compulsions, which was making it difficult for people to function. So spouses, for example, were not allowed to leave the house or meet with other people or be on public transportation because they might bring home some kind of contamination. If there was a concern about some sort of a pandemic or something, maybe they would test them several times a day to make sure that it was okay to be in the home. And if the spouse had to go away for work, they'd either have to not go away for work, or if they went away for work, they'd have to live in a hotel for a couple weeks before they could start testing on a regular basis to come back in the home. These are extreme cases and very, very difficult to deal with. Now there's another twist on this, which is something we call Pure-O OCD. So we've talked about regular OCD, which is obsessions and compulsions with various forms of insight. Now we talk about Pure-O OCD. Pure-O OCD is short for purely obsessional OCD. It's a subtype of OCD where individuals primarily experience obsessions without obvious visible compulsions. However, the compulsions may be mental, such as excessive ruminating or reassurance seeking. So I want to make it clear, Pure-O OCD does not mean that you have obsessions without compulsions. It means you have obsessions and your compulsions might be mental, such as worrying or ruminating, something that people don't see, like washing your hands. So an example of Pure-O OCD might be an obsessive fear of causing harm to a loved one. So the compulsion might be constantly analyzing past actions and seeking reassurance from others to alleviate the distress caused by the obsession. Now we go to the other side. There's something called Tourettic OCD. Tourettic OCD is a unique subtype of obsessive-compulsive disorder characterized by the presence of compulsions without the typical obsessions seen in classic OCD. In Tourettic OCD, individuals experience motor or vocal tics that are similar to those found in Tourette Syndrome, but these tics are driven by compulsive urges rather than being purely involuntary. Motor tics involve sudden, rapid, repetitive movements of specific muscle groups. Examples might include blinking, head jerking, or shoulder shrugging. Vocal tics are involuntary vocal sounds or noises, which can range from grunts and throat clearing to more complex vocalizations like words or phrases. So, for example, might be a Tourettic OCD type of a tic. In Tourettic OCD, these tics are not solely a result of neurological or genetic factors, as seen in Tourette Syndrome, but are instead intertwined with the compulsive aspect of OCD. While individuals with classic OCD experience obsessions, the intrusive and distressing thoughts that lead to compulsions, the repetitive behaviors or mental acts, those with Tourettic OCD exhibit primarily compulsive behaviors without the presence of obsessions. So, Tourettic OCD is based upon compulsions without the typical obsessions. In Tourettic OCD, the motor or vocal tics themselves can be viewed as the compulsions. These tics are not purely involuntary, but are performed in response to an inner sense of discomfort or anxiety. Instead of experiencing the typical obsessive thoughts that trigger compulsions, individuals with Tourettic OCD feel an urge or tension building up, which is temporarily relieved by performing the tic. So here's how it works. First, there's tension or discomfort. The individuals with Tourettic OCD experience an uncomfortable internal sensation, often described as a buildup of tension or pressure. This sensation is akin to the anxiety or distress experienced by individuals with classic OCD when they have obsessions. Next is a compulsive tic. To alleviate the discomfort, individuals with Tourettic OCD engage in motor or vocal tics. These tics temporarily relieve the inner tension, providing a sense of relief and comfort. Then there's a lack of obsessive thoughts. Unlike classic OCD, where obsessions precede compulsions, individuals with Tourettic OCD typically do not experience the intrusive and distressing thoughts, the obsessions, that are characteristic of classic OCD. It's important to note that while the tics in Tourettic OCD serve as compulsive behaviors, they may also be accompanied by distress or frustration, as individuals may recognize that the tics are unwanted or disruptive. However, these tics are not driven by the same cognitive process as obsessions in classic OCD. Treatment for Tourettic OCD often involves a combination of behavioral therapy, such as habit reversal training, and medication to address the motor and vocal tics and reduce the associated distress. Understanding this type of OCD is crucial for clinicians to provide appropriate treatment and support for individuals living with Tourettic OCD. So in summary, OCD presents in various forms with varying levels of insight and unique symptomatology. Understanding these different facets of OCD is essential for accurate diagnosis and appropriate treatment, as treatment approaches may differ based upon the individual's level of insight and specific symptoms. Whether it's classic OCD, Pure-O OCD, Tourettic OCD, or any other form, seeking professional help is crucial for effective management and improved quality of life for individuals living with these conditions. If you or someone you know thinks you may have OCD, it's important to meet with a therapist who is specially trained in OCD to talk about it. If you need support, join us at our free support group, which you can sign up at www.stopmyocd.com.